Hello, everybody! Welcome back to another episode of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. This is an episode unlike any other because, guys, this is the first episode of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod where we have hit triple digits. Welcome! And we can never go back. We are never going to be able to go back from this. Welcome to ACCESS Blockbusters Pod, episode 100. Thank you guys so much for joining us on every single episode. If you have joined us on any part of this journey, whether you just watched one individual clip and you decided to check out the entire podcast that we've been posting on YouTube for a while now, whether or not you were here since episode 1, episode 27, episode 56, episode 99, episode 100, if this is your first episode, welcome to the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. Thank you all so much for joining us. It has been so fun to be able to do this, and I am just so excited to see where we can go from here. Thank you so much for all the support, all the love, and guys, there's something special that we're going to start out this episode with, and so stay tuned for the first topic, mystery topic, kind of, and the individual clip will be posted next Friday, so more people will probably be hearing about it as well, but just a special way to celebrate episode 100, which I guess in reality the actual result of that will not be coming out for another couple episodes, but anyways, it's something that I wanted to do again for a while now, hint, hint, wink, wink again. And so there is that. Thank you all so much for joining us. Guys, we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers by the end of 2025, and we can do it. We are over 1,900 subscribers. Thank you so much. It is crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Make sure if you are liking this content to subscribe. It's free. Just hit that red button on YouTube and leave a comment and a like down below. And if you are interested in the audio-only platform, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Overcast, we are available there as well. That is where the podcast is uploaded in full before anywhere else. Guys, episode 100. It's crazy. It's crazy. But it's going to be another episode. We're going to cover a lot of stuff that happened last week with New York Comic Con. It's just sort of the way that this recording cycle goes. But hopefully some interesting things to talk about with Wonder Man and Daredevil. So I'm really, really excited. Thank you so much again. It's amazing. Let's get into today's topics. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much. It is, I just wanted to start out this episode by saying thank you for 100 episodes of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. It's crazy to me. Introing the episode as episode number 100 is it is something that I don't even know if I could have possibly fathomed at any point in time. And so just want to say thank you. It's been crazy. We have been consistently podcasting for over a year now. We did an episode a couple weeks ago where we talked about the fact that, we've been doing daily uploads for a year, over a year now. And it's been crazy, Daily uploads meaning we've clipped segments from the podcast, but we've been doing the weekly hour plus episodes every single week for the last year. And it's been amazing. So 100 episodes, including some episodes that came out, back to back on days like the DCE rewatch, which we're probably going to pick up as well. So probably going to churn out like 10 episodes of the podcast in December. So again, it's not like it's not like it's been 100 weeks necessarily. But honestly, I mean, this podcast started in 2020. And I did the first few episodes then. I did more episodes, I think, summer of 2021. I did more in 2022, 2023, just on and off as I could. And as summer during those times in my life were the most available for me. And then now, I've been able to keep it up. And while we may not do daily uploads every single day, that doesn't make sense. Daily uploads forever, in terms of clipping the podcast and things like that. I really want to stay committed to at least doing a weekly episode of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod every single week. For the foreseeable future. Let's see how long we can go next year. Get to episode 150, 160, 75, whatever it might be. I'd be excited about that. So, yeah, guys, thank you so much. And as a bonus, and this is only given participation in this. So if not enough people participate, the title of the segment will give it away. But this is going to be just kind of a call for an AMA and Ask Me Anything. I did this a long time ago. There are a lot of new people hanging out on the channel, which I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for hanging out and joining the ACCESS Blockbusters crew. And we're going to do an AMA. So if enough people in the comments, you can post as many questions as you want in the comments. If one person posts 600 questions, I don't know if I can answer all of them. But yeah, we're going to keep that, I'll check in on the comments for a good while, maybe a week or so. And then maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll follow up on that AMA and answer all of those questions. But yeah, feel free to drop any questions. Doesn't have to be about movies or television shows or anything. It can be about life in general. I mean, again, I'm not going to answer every single question. If you're asking for my, I don't know, my phone number or my social security number, I'm not going to give you those things. But no, I'd be super happy to answer any questions that you guys have. So thank you guys so much for 100 episodes of the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod. Here's to 100 more. And let's keep on going with the topics. Alrighty, guys. So I alluded to this last week as we talked about the finale to Peacemaker Season 2, but the DCU is done for 2025. I think, unless James Gunn drops a crazy, surprising project. We might get a Supergirl trailer in December, something like that. So we'll keep talking about the DCU. But in terms of releasing projects, the DCU will not be releasing anymore this year. We had Creature Commandos that started in 2024 and bled into 2025. And then we had Superman, of course, in July, kicking off the DCU in the biggest way. And then now we have Peacemaker Season 2. So what I wanted to do, because I think it's interesting, right? Because this is a brand new universe, and James Gunn can, and he has been, he can tease and tell us as much as he wants to about this new universe, but we're not really going to learn really what his DCU is and what it's going to function like and what it is about and what it's really centering around, what the centering principles are around this new universe, until we actually see what he has to show us, when he actually puts his money where his mouth is, so to speak, James Gunn. And now he has. We have 3 projects. And I have 5 takeaways about what the DCU is and what it probably will be like based on these 3 projects. What we can learn about the DCU based on these first 3 projects. A few of these are going to be more story oriented. So literally in that universe of the DCU, what is going on and what can we expect? And I mean, not in super detail. Like we won't, Salvation. Spoiler alert for Peacemaker Season 2, but, the prison thing in Peacemaker Season 2 is going to be a big part of Man of Tomorrow, and blah, 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 and Superman's going to lead into Supergirl. But, I mean, those are things that we can talk about all day long, but just more higher level things, right? So story level in the DCU, higher level things. But then also, just what can we learn about the process that goes on behind these movies and these TV shows, and what exactly the thinking is behind all of that. So 5 things that I think, and there are way more than 5, but these are the 5 things that have come to mind for me. Number 1, and we're going to start out with 2, with the story level thing. Number 1 is that metahumans are a problem, question mark, quotation marks, because, I mean, it depends on who you talk to, but just for the grand scope of the DCU, right, in terms of now Rick Flag and Lex Luthor, the metahuman, the quote-unquote metahuman problem is going to be a big theme going forward. James Gunn has said as much, and really, I think this first chapter of Gods and Monsters is probably hinting at this fact that, there are going to be a lot of these godlike characters that come out with the Green Lanterns and with Supergirl and Superman and monsters like Clayface and Swamp Thing and whatever. And people are going to be scared, is my guess. And so that's, the human intervention of needing to trap these superheroes and get rid of them. It's been done before, but it's effective as a storytelling mechanism. And so Lex Luthor obviously will be a big part of that and whatever comes next, I think. So that is my first takeaway for the story of the DCU, is that metahumans are going to be a problem. Which leads me to my second point. And this is something that people have commented about and people have been talking about for a long, long time. And I think it's just time to put it to bed. There is going to be interconnectivity and continuity in the DCU. Now, that's not to say, by the way, that every project has to literally be intrinsically tied to one another. It's not going to be like, I don't know, like an Avengers Age of Ultron goes to Thor Ragnarok, goes to Infinity War. It doesn't have to be like that, right? Clayface may not have hardly anything to do with anything else going on. Then again, people want to make it out to be that the MCU, every single project is so connected to everything else. You could watch, barring the Falcon cameo, you could watch the first Ant-Man and have a good idea of what's going on. The first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, you don't need to know anything about the first Black Panther movie. You could watch the first Black Panther movie and not know anything, right? So I think that people are looking at the MCU in hindsight a little bit differently now, just because of how big and expansive this universe has gotten. But it's not like the MCU has also operated like this. The DCU is going to have an overarching story. It's going to have continuity in it. The question is, in what ways and how much? I don't know. But it's definitely going to have continuity in its story. It's just, these stories, right? Creature Commandos is really closely tied, not really closely, but pretty closely tied to your Peacemaker Season 2. Superman is going to be tied to Supergirl. It looks like Lanterns is going to tie into Man of Tomorrow, just by the teases from Aaron Pierre. These things are going to be tied together. It just is what it is. You can say that that's a good thing. You can say it's a bad thing, but it is just what it is. The third thing that I am seeing is that post-credit scenes are not really going to be a thing. I don't know how to feel about this, honestly. I kind of enjoy the post-credit scenes. You know, I do enjoy just getting the little teases, but we've also seen in the MCU lately how that's kind of backfired, right? How having post-credit scenes that don't lead to anything can almost have the opposite effect of just being fake teases and false promises and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but it looks like James Gunn is committing to the fact that there might be post-credit scenes, but really, they're not going to be used to set up any major part of the story moving forward. And again, good thing, bad thing, we'll have to see. But yeah, it just is a part of what the DCU is going to be moving forward. So that is the third thing. The fourth thing, and this is interesting because maybe it's unique specifically to 2025 in the DCU. Maybe not. Maybe this is really how the DCU is going to be. This is James Gunn's world. Now, I say all that because, again, he has directed and really created the first 3 projects of the DCU. They are his brainchildren. I don't know, whatever. They are from his brain, basically. Creature Commandos, his passion project. Peacemaker Season 2, obviously another of his passion projects. And he took on Superman. The DCU has been, thus far, I've been saying it jokingly, half jokingly, but it's true. It's been the James Gunn cinematic universe using DC characters. It just has been. Now, I think this is kind of foretelling the fact that, yes, he is going to, it's not like he's going to do all the interference and studio notes and things like that for Supergirl and Clayface. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that this world that he is building is his world. And other people will play in his world, but this is James Gunn's world. And the fifth thing that I think we've learned about the DCU, and again, I don't know if this is a good thing or if this is a bad thing, but these projects are going to throw a lot at you. I think Peacemaker Season 2 was the exclamation point to this fact. And he said it before, James Gunn has said, that Superman, it's kind of like Star Wars, you're meant to just kind of dive into it, But at its core, and I think Superman does this as well in a way, but at its core, Star Wars, yes, is crazy because of Death Stars and X-Wings and things like that, and things that you have to pick up on. But the core story is so familiar, right? Hero's journey, Luke Skywalker. And I think James Gunn did that with Superman, but, I wonder about the people who are like, Guy Gardner, Bowl-Cut, Mr. Terrific, right? Crypto, the space dog, and portals and rifts and all these things. I just wonder what people thought about that. Creature Commandos, I feel like Creature Commandos, if you weren't a fan of DC, you didn't watch Creature Commandos. But if you are a part of the subset of the population that watched Creature Commandos but had no bearing on any of the stuff that was going on in it and just went into it completely blind, I would love to hear what your experience was, because I feel like most everybody who watched Creature Commandos was a fan of DC or was interested in seeing what was happening there. But Peacemaker Season 2, oh my goodness, just throwing all sorts of things at you. Prime Eagles and quantum unfolding chambers and alternate, Nazi dimensions. And it's just crazy. So I don't think Supergirl or Clayface is going to be any different. I think Lanterns might be a little more grounded, but it's still going to have Sinestro, right? So, I think that this DCU, be prepared, I would say, if you're going into any of these projects, because I think these projects they're going to throw a lot at you. Again, pretty much all these things, I'm not even here to make a judgment about any of it. I don't know if it's good or a bad thing. I think we'll have to see about it. For me personally, right, I don't think I've loved all 3 of these projects, right? I've liked all of them to a certain degree. I think Creature Commandos has been a little bit iffy for me. But again, I think that there's a lot of really good things happening in the DCU, and there's a lot of room for growth as well, in my opinion. And I think I'm excited to see how James Gunn can take these things. But getting back to the point, none of these things that I'm saying here are meant to be indictments on the DCU. None of these things are meant to be a necessary indicator of success. I just think that these are 5 things that I've noticed thus far from the DCU. Guys, what did I miss? What are the things that you think that the DCU is pointing towards? What are things that you've noticed across all 3 of these projects so far in the DCU that you think will carry over to the rest of the projects in 2026? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, let's talk about the penultimate episode, the second to last episode of Season 2 of Gen V, the spinoff to The Boys. Let's talk about it. Guys, if you have not seen the episode, this is going to be a full spoiler discussion. So again, no worries if you haven't, but just make sure to save this segment, save the podcast for later, and come back once you have seen it. Let's talk about this episode. So just for a little bit of background, a little bit of context, if you are joining us for the first time, and by the way, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome to the ACCESS Blockbusters Pod or YouTube channel, but we also have a spoiler discussion. I did episodes 1 through 5 together. That was during the brunt of Peacemaker Season 2, so just didn't have enough time to break out those episodes. But I think now we're going to be able to do individual recaps for the episodes. So we did one for episode 6, and we're doing one here for episode 7. Previously, though, I've been enjoying the season. I think one of the things that has been interesting for me to watch is the fact that at the end of Season 1, they set up this really interesting and fascinating conundrum with all the kids now being out of the school and in this mysterious prison, which we've learned since then has been called Elmira. That's the prison that they were in at the end of Season 1, when Homelander blasts Marie. And at the end of Season 1, it's kind of this whole, okay, so where are we going to go from here? You know, it's upending the status quo. There's going to be some interesting changes happening. And then in Season 2, in the trailer, we see right away, no, the kids are right back to school. And it's that thing where what worked so well in Gen V Season 1, the basic premise of that season, is the fact that they're at school and it's unique and it's interesting. And that's true. But I was kind of thinking, well, it's a little disappointing because I wanted to see them in a different setting. I wanted to see the status quo upended a little bit. But fine, we're back in the school. We're back at Godolkin University. Now, throughout the first 6 episodes of Gen V Season 2, while there have been some really interesting things that have been happening, some very interesting revelations, for example, like with Annabeth, Marie's sister, coming back into the picture in last week's episode, I feel like the showrunners have been stringing us along a little bit. I feel like while the show hasn't lost my interest entirely, I do think that the show has been relying on us to be curious about what's going on, and it was just starting to overstay its welcome a little bit. Dean Cypher, I thought through the first 3 or 4 episodes, was a fascinating character. I thought, oh wow, this is such an interesting character, because Marie was like, oh, he's a human, but then he has superpowers, so is he a soup? And then what is he doing with Godolkin's body in there? I mean, such an interesting character, but by the time you get to episode 6, he's just kind of doing the same thing of, oh, I'm one step ahead of you, don't, watch out for me. And it was getting a little bit old. And also at the end of episode 6, in episode 6 they meet Stan Edgar, which I thought was a really good connection to the world of the boys. But I thought at the end of episode 6, Marie just kind of goes off with Kate, and it's like, okay, I guess so. So we head into episode 7. And episode 7, I have to say, because look, I didn't think that any of the episodes thus far have been filler necessarily. I hate filler episodes more than almost anything in the world. And I don't think that every episode of television needs to be the most action-packed and doesn't need to have 6 twists in it or anything like that. No, not at all. I really enjoy episodes, where characters are just talking. If it's done really well, if it progresses the story and progresses the characters in an interesting way, I'm not asking for action and twists and everything to be in every single episode. But again, I think with the premise of Gen V Season 2, I think we have been waiting for almost the entire season for the other shoe to drop. And so it's 2 episodes left, and I was like, okay, well, I hope we actually get to see something. And I think this episode, I don't know if it's too little too late. I truthfully, I don't know how they're going to resolve what they set up, because what they set up at the end of episode 7 is, let's not mince words, it's a massive, massive twist. I don't know how they're going to resolve it, but I am fascinated by it. And I think for the first time in Gen V Season 2, especially the first time since the beginning, I feel a sense of momentum building again for these characters and for what's going on. Because now we run into the situation where that old, burned, bruised, battered man, that Cypher, quote-unquote Cypher, the Cypher that we'd been following the entire season, had been holding in that prison, is the actual Cypher. And I'm assuming, I haven't read any theories, and I didn't catch it in the episode if this was revealed, but I'm assuming that is still Godolkin. So I'm assuming that these 2 characters, Cypher and Godolkin, are one and the same person. I guess that was something where at the very beginning of Gen V Season 2, you saw this character running away from the fire and that horrific opening scene where characters get burned and soups are created and all that kind of stuff. But there was no indication in that scene that Godolkin had powers. And so I kind of just thought, and this was a smart play on the show, I just kind of thought, oh, this is a human, just a random human who was experimenting to get the soups. But it turns out either through that experience at the very beginning of Gen V Season 2, or afterwards, or before that at some point, he has Compound V, he is a soup, and he is very, very, very powerful. He has this insane a superpower of manipulation that he can use. So, and in order to get there, I mean, I'm gonna be honest though. In order to get there, right? Because I thought that once that twist manifests itself, and once we get to the last 15 minutes of the episode, I was so on board. I was like, this is so interesting for the trajectory of the show. And the fact that Dean Cypher, that we'd been following, himself was a puppet. Although I have questions about this, and I guess we can get to a couple of them here. So one is assuming that unless, the actual Dean Cypher / Godolkin's powers are just absolutely unlimited in range, I'm assuming that body had to have been close by to the Dean Cypher that we've been seeing, because otherwise that is crazy that he would be able to control this one guy from, I don't know, miles and miles away. That is just absolutely insane. But maybe we're going to find out he is literally the most powerful soup in the world. That, again, would be crazy. The other question that I think is an intentional question, it has to be, because the show is going out of its way, has been going out of its way to show us this, is those fits of rage that the human Dean Cypher has been having towards this body. And one wonders, right? One wonders what the point of that all is, if, in fact, this actual Godolkin Cypher, I'm going to call him Godolkin Cypher, is the actual Dean Cypher, is the actual threat here, right? And nobody, the assumption is nobody's watching, and so it doesn't really make sense for all this to be happening if nothing's going on there. Again, I'm assuming it's an intentional choice because, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to show it all the time if nothing is going to come of it. I just don't quite understand what the point of that all is. And of course, Sister Sage knew this whole time, right? She knew this whole time that this was going to happen. She's obviously one step ahead of everything, so that all makes sense here. And I like that, right? I don't know if there is more to the character of the human Dean Cypher versus the Godolkin Cypher, but now I think we set up this really interesting paradigm here of this crazy character who, we've had this dichotomy in the boys universe and in Gen V season 2 of not just getting rid of humans is what the soups want to do, which is, again, horrific and crazy. But now we have characters who want to get rid of not just humans, but weaker soups, quote unquote weaker soups, right? In their eyes. And that is just horrific, and that's scary. And it's now setting up an even more interesting dichotomy and problem here for the characters in the boys universe. I am so interested to see what's going on here. I have to say, like, going back to what I said earlier, like I said, I think the mechanics to get there, right, in order to get us to Dean Cypher or the Cypher Godolkin were a little sloppy, I have to say, because I think that Marie, and it's hard because you want the characters to be human enough that they make mistakes and they don't act rationally all the time. I get that. But at the same time, some of the things that Marie was doing in this episode, I was like, but surely we realize that this is all a trap, right? I just feel like these characters are smart enough and have been set up to be smart enough to realize that this whole thing was a trap with Dean Cypher. I don't understand how these characters didn't think it through more, and Marie was, I guess she was so blinded by her ambition or her, I don't know what it was, but I just feel like you had to have realized, I mean, that's what I was saying the entire episode was, you have to surely realize that this is all a trap, right? And I guess the characters just weren't thinking, or they knew it was a trap and they wanted to go for it anyways. That's one of my tropes, the tropes that I like the least in movies and television shows, where it's like, of course I know it's a trap, I'm still gonna go anyways because I think I can do it better. And it's like, okay, but in this series you have a character in Annabeth who can literally see the future, which we haven't seen yet, I don't think. Not the smartest move in my opinion, but okay. So again, the mechanics to get to the whole Cypher situation were a little bit convoluted in my eyes, but still, I think that what we set up at the end of this episode was super, super interesting. So again, I am very fascinated. I am so fascinated to see what happens in episode 8. Like I said, though, I don't know if it's too little too late. I frankly have no idea. I could it be, enough in one episode to wrap up the fact that now apparently Godolkin / real Cypher is just walking around killing a bunch of students on campus? I have no idea. Are we going to find out how this all came to be with this human version of Cypher? Why is he going into fits of rage against the actual Cypher when it looks like he was being controlled by the actual Cypher all this time? It's all crazy. It's all coming to a head. I don't know. I feel like Gen V Season 1 built up to its finale where there was just mass chaos at Godolkin University in the last episode, which I thought it was crazy, but it felt satisfying. And then Homelander blasting Marie, obviously. I don't know what's going to happen in this last episode, but hey, I asked for things to happen, and maybe a little bit, too little, too late, but things are happening in this last episode, in the second to last episode of Gen V Season 2. So I'm very curious again to see where this show will go. Guys, what did you think? Did you watch episode... I'm assuming you watched it if you're listening to this spoiler discussion, but once you watched Gen V Season 2 Episode 7, what did you think about it? Did you guys enjoy the episode, or did you guys think it was maybe disappointing, or did you guys think it's great and it's going to set up a fascinating finale like I do? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, Daredevil Born Again Season 2, we're going to talk about that much more later on in this episode as we cover New York Comic Con and all the fun little things that were happening there. One thing though that we knew beforehand, before any of this, before New York Comic Con, was that Jessica Jones was going to be returning for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. That was something that we talked about earlier on in the podcast, or earlier on this year rather, in a different podcast episode, and now we have some more details about how exactly that might manifest, not just in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, but post Daredevil Born Again Season 2 later on in the MCU. Because that was maybe a question of, was she going to appear after Daredevil Born Again Season 2? One would think that if you bring back Kristen Ritter to play Jessica Jones, that you were going to have her be in more than one project, but perhaps it was just going to be a little cameo in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, perhaps just in Season 2 and Season 3. But now, we have some confirmation, or not confirmation, but I would say pretty much confirmation that Kristen Ritter's Jessica Jones will be back pretty soon after in the MCU, and might be getting her own revival show. So Brad Winterbaum, who is the head of Marvel Television, was asked about this and asked pretty point blank about the future of Jessica Jones and whether or not she would be getting a revival series. And this is what he had to say. So the interviewer's question, very simple, quote, "So when's Jessica Jones born again?" Brad Winterbaum's answer, quote, "Maybe sooner than you think." Put a pin in that. We'll come back to it in just a second. Jessica Jones herself, Kristen Ritter, also, I think in a separate interview at New York Comic Con, had this to say when asked about the future of Jessica Jones. She said, quote, "There's a lot of stuff that I felt there was room to explore, and Brad Winterbaum, and I talked about it, and I'm not going to say any of it because we're going to be doing it." So, explicit confirmation that Jessica Jones will have a pretty significant future in the MCU, it seems like. It seems like that this character is not going to go anywhere after Daredevil Born Again Season 2, and B, that she is most likely, I think, according to Brad Winterbaum, going to be getting her own revival show. Now, again, it's possible that he was hinting at maybe another Defenders kind of revival or something like that. Maybe not Jessica Jones Born Again. But the question was, and I say Jessica Jones Born Again, it's probably going to be called something like AKA Jessica Jones or something to that effect. Because, you can't, I think for many reasons they can't, or they won't call it Jessica Jones Season 4. I think that would be confusing to the audience who hasn't seen Jessica Jones Season 1 through 3 and are just watching the MCU. And then B, I think also there are money reasons as to why you don't do that, or why a company wouldn't do that for financial reasons, but that's a whole separate conversation. But, let's just call it, I'd like to think it would be called AKA Jessica Jones, just, as an example. That's the titling convention for all the episodes, AKA something. So let's say AKA Jessica Jones is happening. It's pretty clear from the question that the question was pointed at a Jessica Jones series, right? Not just her reappearance in the MCU. And Brad Winterbaum says, well, maybe sooner than you think. So the other thing I've been realizing as we've been doing the ACCESS Blockbusters pod and as we've been covering news like this over the past year is that Brad Winterbaum is not so subtle. Brad Winterbaum, when he says things like Kevin Feige will say, kind of dodge questions and he'll be like, yeah, great question, can't answer that. Brad Winterbaum likes to say things, likes to reveal things, and when he says something, it's usually true. Remember, in an interview with Entertainment Weekly right before New York Comic Con, again, we'll talk about this later on in the podcast, but the trailer in New York Comic Con showed Eldon Henson as Foggy Nelson. Now, Eldon Henson, we talked about a couple weeks ago, had just recently said, oh, no, I'm not in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Just before this trailer came out, or this trailer was shown to the New York Comic Con public, Brad Winterbaum did an interview, and he was like, no, Eldon Henson's not telling the truth. Or, well, not that he's not telling the truth. Well, he isn't telling the truth, but it's not like he was outright lying. He was rather probably confused or misinformed or whatnot. But Brad Winterbaum was like, oh, no, Eldon is totally in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. So he is one of these executives who just likes to say things and likes to reveal things. Is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know. It's kind of in the realm of James Gunn, where when they say something, it's pretty blunt, it's pretty straightforward, and it's pretty much true. So I would take him me personally, this is all just speculation and my own thoughts now, I would take him at face value. I think that a Jessica Jones revival series is probably in the works at this point. What that would entail, I have no idea. Again, I mean, on the YouTube channel, we've talked about in our Defender Saga watch, I'm not the biggest fan of Jessica Jones Season 1 and Season 2. I know that's probably unpopular, but none of that is centering around Kristen Ritter. I think that she is a great fit for the role, and I'm personally very excited to see her in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. So I'd be very curious to see what this revival show might look like if it does happen. Guys, what do you think about this? Do you think, and this is what I'm gonna call it because I like it, aka Jessica Jones, do you think that series is going to happen, or do you think that maybe they're just kind of hinting at the future of Daredevil Born Again? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, let's kick off our coverage of the New York Comic Con panel for Marvel Studios, specifically for the Marvel TV shows. Now, there were announcements and teases for the five shows that are going to be coming out in 2026. And we're going to split this up into 3 separate segments. So this segment number 1 is going to cover 3 of these projects that I would say didn't have as much going on with them. Not a whole lot to talk about here, but still some interesting things with these 3 projects, and then we'll dive into the next 2 individually as we go along. So these 3 projects here, we're going to talk about the 2 Marvel animation projects, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2, X-Men 97 Season 2, and Vision Quest. We're going to sprinkle in some thoughts here and there also from Brad Winterbaum, one of the most confusing executives I've ever seen. We'll talk about that more in the Daredevil Born Again Season 2 segment, but we'll sprinkle in some of the things that he said as well in interviews, and he did an exclusive with Entertainment Weekly, so some things in there, but mostly just covering the official announcements that were presented at New York Comic Con 2025. So I almost got ahead of myself because there's so many 2026s in my notes here because all these projects are releasing next year, but no, we're still in 2025. So let's start out here with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2. Not a whole lot. Again, there's a reason that these three projects have been grouped together, but Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2 will be releasing in fall 2026. And, I was pleasantly surprised with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 1. It was one of the projects that I just had zero excitement for, and I really enjoyed it. You can go check out every single one of my spoiler discussions that we did for that show, but I really did enjoy it. So very much looking forward to Season 2. We know that Spider-Gwen is going to be a part of it. And the other big confirmation that we got from New York Comic Con is that Venom is going to be a big part of it. Now, Venom is a character that, he's gotten his whole franchise. He has a whole trilogy. Can you believe that Venom has a whole trilogy before Shang-Chi has a second movie? It's crazy. But Venom has a whole trilogy, and he also infamously appeared in Spider-Man 3. But we haven't really seen him in the Spider-Man universes for a long while now. He's not been in the animated movies, and he hasn't been in Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland's universes. So I'd be curious to see how they use Venom. I'm sure that Venom is going to be used as a character eventually in the Tom Holland universe, but we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I'm very curious. I mean, Venom is such an interesting character that, it makes sense that you can do a whole entire trilogy on him, honestly, because he's so interesting. So Venom will be a big part of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2. X-Men 97 Season 2. It's going to be coming out summer 2026, and Season 3 is also already in production. Now, Brad Winterbaum did kind of loosely address some of the drama that had been going on with the previous showrunner, Beau DeMayo. We're not going to get into any of that here, but he talked about that a little bit and just was pretty diplomatic about the whole situation. But X-Men 97 Season 2, people have been saying it's going to be darker. He kind of confirmed that. Ross Marquand, who was the Red Skull in Infinity War and Endgame, but also voiced, I forget which character, but one of the characters in X-Men 97. And he said, yeah, people are going to die. It's going to be a crazy, crazy season. Apocalypse is going to be the main focus there, maybe foreshadowing what's going to happen in the MCU at large. So that is interesting. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm excited. Again, I wasn't the biggest fan of X-Men 97 Season 1 because maybe I just didn't have the nostalgia for the original series. And also I just didn't hit me in the right way. But I'm interested to see where they go with Season 2. And finally, the one that I think a lot of us are the most interested in out of these 3 and the only live action show is Vision Quest. Now, the big thing about Vision Quest, and we didn't get an actual trailer released for it for the masses, so I didn't get to see any footage, but they did show some footage, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Just to be clear, I am not reading every single footage description out there. I think if we're going to get trailers, then let's just wait and see until an actual trailer comes out. They did confirm it's going to be releasing sometime in 2026. It's probably going to be, I would say, in that Thanksgiving, October, November, December window, because they just haven't been ready to announce a release date, and they have X-Men 97 lined up for fall. So I would think that Vision Quest is going to be coming out at the end of the year, which is interesting, right? It's interesting because that would line it up right before Doomsday, so we'll see where it all fits in there. But the title has been confirmed. We talked about that a few weeks ago, that, nobody had officially said Vision Quest for a while until we saw it on a crew member's t-shirt, and now it's officially called Vision Quest. We have a logo for that and everything. The footage, just from the brief little snippets of descriptions that I saw here and there, seems interesting. Ultron was doing a monologue. I don't know if we saw Ultron in the footage. I'm not sure. No one's confirmed that, but I definitely have heard that he was basically giving the monologue over the footage. And then we see him talking. I think White Vision is there, obviously, because that's the Vision that's in this show. But we also see, apparently, human forms of a lot of the AIs, which we knew, right? Jarvis, Friday, Edith, and Dummy. That, to me, honestly, is the biggest news out of anything here, is that Dummy is going to be appearing in human form. I don't know, that makes me smile, because Dummy is one of those, he was that little helper robot that Tony Stark hated, but loved in the Iron Man trilogy, and I think that's kind of fun, Also, apparently, we got to see Rowan Malika as Tommy. Someone said as Tommy, and I don't know if that is just connecting dots, or if in the trailer it literally said, he was dressing up as Speed, and he looks like Tommy. I don't know. But apparently, we got to see him there. So, yeah, I mean, and also the other thing that people were saying is that it has a very existential, kind of spooky WandaVision trailer kind of vibe here. Like, what's going on, mystery, and all that kind of stuff, which I like. I think that we talked about last week, or the week before, how Vision Quest is going to be sort of an existential show where it's figuring out, Vision trying to just figure out his place in the world and how he wants to grasp who he is and what he is, and Wanda and the Hex and everything. So I think it's a good tone to take here for Vision Quest. So those are the 3 projects covered in this segment. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2 coming out fall 2026, X-Men 97 summer 2026, and Vision Quest probably end of the year 2026. What do you guys think of any of these announcements? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, let's move on to part 2 of our coverage of New York Comic Con for the Marvel Studios panel. Here we have a lot of interesting things to talk about for one particular show, that being Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Like I said with the previous segment, we're going to be sprinkling in some comments that Brad Winterbaum had made prior to the event, and I had held off on making segments about all those things because I figure that a lot of the things that he talks about will be either confirmed or alluded to in the actual panel itself, which I was partly correct about. So I think that it's good to just compile all those things in here as well. So let's dive into some specifics. So announced at the panel, the second season, which had been heavily rumored to be doing so, but has now been confirmed to be releasing in March of 2026. So that is exciting. It's coming up actually quite soon. I mean, 5 months is maybe not soon in most people's eyes, but it's going to happen really soon, especially with the holidays and whatnot. I want to actually dive into the footage first for this one. I think we talked about the footage last for Vision Quest, but I want to talk about the footage first. So a couple key takeaways here. One is that Karen and Matt apparently are in a relationship. So that's interesting. We saw Jessica Jones, or I didn't see it, but people who were there saw Jessica Jones in the footage. And here's the kicker. Foggy Nelson is in the trailer, apparently in some new footage. Now he's apparently having the long hair, has the long hair. So it's clear that Eldon Henson did in fact film scenes for Foggy Nelson in flashbacks. If you haven't been following all of this, this might seem like such a non-story, but I think it's this whole Foggy in Daredevil Born Again Season 2 just charade has been ridiculous because, first of all, as Daredevil Born Again Season 1 was actively coming out, right, as episodes were releasing, Brad Winterbaum, like I said, alluded to in the previous segment, the most confusing executive I've ever seen, in Marvel at least, said, oh yeah, but Foggy, Eldon Henson is coming back for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. And everyone was like, what? Because he dies literally in the first 10 minutes of the show. So what does that even mean? But okay, maybe flashbacks, we speculated, whatnot. Then a week ago, or actually, about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Eldon Henson said, no, I'm actually not in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Sorry, guys. And we're all like, okay, so somebody's wrong here, or somebody's not, somebody is trying to cover something up. That's confusing. And then, right before New York Comic Con, somebody asked Brad Winterbaum, the EW Entertainment Weekly article interviewer, asked Brad Winterbaum, so what do you make of Eldon Henson's comments that he's not in the show? And Brad Winterbaum was like, oh, no, Eldon Henson's just confused because Foggy's definitely in the show, and of course he's there, and actors don't know what they should say or what they should not say. So then it made the situation look like Eldon Henson was basically just scared that he had spoiled something, and so he just didn't want to say whether he was coming back. And that added to the confusion. And now the trailer footage has confirmed that he actually... So it's a whole mess. But anyways, the confirmation is that Foggy Nelson is coming back for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, probably in flashbacks because he has longer hair in the footage. That is all that. Now let's dive into 3 interesting nuggets that came out aside from the panel. Number 1, the Entertainment Weekly interviewer asked Brad Winterbaum about the other 2 defenders, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, and asked if Mike Coulter or Finn Jones would be in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, because obviously Christian Ritter is, and we're assuming that Jon Bernthal is as well as Punisher, although that's not confirmed, because he has his own special presentation, and he also is in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Talk about that in just a second. And what Brad Winterbaum, just to paraphrase him, said is that the less I say about this, the better. So if he, and again, we're always playing speculation here, but I would imagine, and I'm just speculating here, if Brad Winterbaum knew for sure that they were not in the show, I don't think he has any reason to lie about it, because again, he would know, I think, he would know that if we're taking him at face value here, or rather, if we're not taking him at face value, like he could say, "Oh, Luke Cage and Iron Fist are not in Daredevil Born Again Season 2," and a lot of us wouldn't necessarily believe him, even if that were the truth, right? But by him saying, "Oh, anything's possible," it kind of seems like they are, right? Especially Mike Coulter has been around the cast a lot recently, promoting other things, so I don't know. It seems very likely that Luke Cage and Iron Fist are in the show, just because I feel like Brad Winterbaum, like, why are we teasing it if they're not in the show? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So there's that. The second thing, and probably the biggest thing that came out of that interview, is the fact that Brad Winterbaum has confirmed the Daredevil team and the Spider-Man team are very much in communication, the Spider-Man Brand New Day team, and there is this acknowledgement that while these 2 projects are very different tonally, which is great, they should be, right? Daredevil Born Again should be very gritty and very grounded, and Spider-Man, not that it shouldn't be grounded, but it should be more whimsical, and it should have that sort of energy that a Spider-Man film has. That's great. But Brad Winterbaum confirmed that these 2 projects are very much in the same universe, obviously, but that's going to be the case, and you're going to see that in these 2 projects somehow. It's interesting because a couple months ago, Kevin Feige said, when asked about whether or not the Void incidents in Thunderbolts, which happens in New York City, is going to affect Spider-Man Brand New Day or Daredevil Born Again, Kevin Feige was like, no. And at that time, one of the things that we had been hearing was the fact that Marvel really wanted to separate their television universes and their movie universes while still taking place in the same Marvel Cinematic Universe. They were going to mostly be adjacent to one another. That was before we got wind that Frank Castle was going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day, which obviously changes things. And now Brad Winterbaum is saying, well, no, they are very much connected in some way. Does this confirm that Charlie Cox is also going to be in Spider-Man Brand New Day? Not necessarily. I don't know. I would give it a 50-50 shot at this point, but it doesn't not confirm that, so we'll have to see about that. And the final thing that was confirmed, actually not in this interview, but in a separate post by Dario Scartapane, I believe, the showrunner for Daredevil Born Again, is that Season 3 has entered production. We confirmed we talked about the confirmation a few episodes ago that Daredevil Born Again was indeed getting a Season 3, and now he has confirmed that the writer's room is active and they are going to head into production and writing of the 3rd season, and that is underway. So lots to talk about here, even though we didn't get an actual trailer for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I would imagine that would probably be coming out around Christmas time, maybe, in the Avatar Fire and Ash window, at that point somewhere. So maybe that's when we'll get a first look, maybe Thanksgiving. But I'm excited. I think that because this is not the same situation as last season where they had filmed a ton of stuff with different writers and a different set of showrunners. I don't even know if there were showrunners, but head writers. And then they decided to scrap a lot of that, and they kept some of it, and they added in a ton of other extra stuff, and they rewrote entire episodes. I think that this season is going to be much more consistent, and it's going to have a much more definitive tone, and I am very, very excited to see what that looks like. So guys, what do you think of these announcements and reveals about Daredevil Born Again Season 2 from New York Comic Con? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, and the final thing we have to talk about here as we wrap up the Marvel Studios panel from New York Comic Con is Wonder Man. And actually, this segment I saved for last in terms of the Marvel panels because we got an actual public trailer for it. So we'll definitely spend the bulk of our time here talking about what I think is a fascinating trailer. When I finished that trailer, not to get ahead of myself here, but when I finished watching that trailer, I sat back in my chair and went, that is fascinating. I literally said that out loud because we'll talk about why in a couple seconds, but I just think that some of the choices that have already been made in the marketing are super interesting. Anyways, all that aside, let's get to a couple other details that have been confirmed by the panel itself and also by Brad Winterbaum in the Entertainment Weekly article. So the first thing is that Wonder Man was originally going to come out in December 2025, but they have pushed Wonder Man to January 27th, 2026. So just a month later. But it's interesting because it seems like all 8 episodes are going to be streaming at once. Now, a lot of people in the industry seem to be thinking that Wonder Man is actually quite good and Marvel is pretty confident in it. So it's an interesting strategy to drop all 8 episodes at once. I don't know if that's been explicitly confirmed. I think it has been. So again, I'd be very interested in that because usually when studios do this, it is not a good sign. It usually means they lack confidence in the projects that they are doing this for. So we'll have to see what this actually amounts to. But I would hope that it doesn't mean that they're not confident in it. And Brad Winterbaum, when he says that, oh no, we're just trying to avoid the Christmas window when people are watching Home Alone and whatnot, which again is fair. But, I'm just curious about this release strategy because, again, dropping all 8 episodes at once, maybe they just don't flow together really well in weekly segments, and that's fine. So we'll have to see what that looks like there. Other thing he confirmed, and we see this in the trailer as well, is that this is going to definitely be a kind of partnership show. Obviously, Abdul Mateen is going to be the lead as Simon Williams, but also Ben Kingsley, Trevor Slattery is going to be just as big of a presence in the show as well, and we see that in the trailer. So those are the 2 things that were confirmed about Wonder Man. Let's talk about this trailer. So like I said earlier, right, I watched the trailer. I was very curious because the general premise that I knew before this trailer, it looks like this show is going to be taking, is that Simon Williams is an actor, and we kind of heard about this show being a meta, not indictment necessarily, but just a commentary on Hollywood and superhero movies in general. And I was just curious because also in the comics, Simon Williams has superpowers. It's not like he's just some normal guy. We'll get to that in a second. But he has superpowers. And it looks like the villain of the show is going to be his brother, the Grim Reaper, as well. And, superpowers, right? So, it's not like, this is a complete one-off kind of show. And Wonder Man is just, he's a normal person who can't interact with the Avengers. I don't know exactly what his skill sets are, right? But he is a superhero for all intents and purposes, even though this show is making fun of the superhero genre. So what's interesting about this trailer is that if you did not see the Marvel logo, and if you did not recognize Ben Kingsley as Trevor Slattery, and I'm sure that there were Marvel Easter eggs here and there that I just didn't really catch as I was trying to focus on the brunt of the trailer, there is no indication, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe there's a spark in his hands or he does something crazy that I'm just not paying attention to. But for the most part, 99% of the trailer, let's say, gives you no indication that it is A, a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, again, aside from those branding things, and B, that it's even a superhero show. It just purely plays as a satirical commentary on the superhero movie genre. That is a fascinating strategy. Somebody asked Brad Winterbaum in that Entertainment Weekly article whether this was going to be kind of like The Studio, one of the funniest shows, or the most clever shows, I should say. Not laugh out loud funny shows for me personally, but just clever shows in terms of how it portrayed the movie industry for those of us who have been following movies and television for a long time, right? And he said, not really, but it sort of plays in that same ballpark is sort of the vibe that I got from it. It's like not the exact same, but it's similar. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Like, this is really playing into the idea of casting for superhero shows and making reboots and remakes and action scenes. And you obviously have to be careful, right, with that, because if you're a little too self-aware, but then you're trying to push it a little too far, you run the risk of just looking oblivious, right? Because you are making a superhero show at the end of the day. So, you can make fun of it for all you want, but he is a superhero. I think, right? It would be kind of crazy if he just wasn't a superhero. So, I don't know. Maybe things will be worked out at the end. But if you see the poster as well for Wonder Man, it says something like, it's a magazine cover. And it says something like superhero fatigue setting in. So again, poking fun at the idea that we've been talking about for a while of superhero fatigue and all that kind of stuff. So a very, very self-aware show. I personally, when I watched this trailer, I'm sold. I'm really interested in this because it looks like a very clever commentary on making superhero movies in the modern age. And I like the idea that this is a remake of a Wonder Man property that exists in the MCU. And I like Ben Kingsley. I think that he fits very well into this kind of show, into this role. It apparently is Destin Daniel Cretton's brainchild, along with Andrew Guest, who is the writer of this and the writer of Hawkeye as well. So I'm very interested in that. I really like Hawkeye. And I think that Yahya Abdul-Mateen, looks great in the role. It's funny because he infamously called superhero work in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom clown work, which I'm sure he was mostly joking about anyways. If you watch Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, by the way, he's not given Shakespearean dialogue. You know, he's kind of just there to be like, I am the Black Manta and I'm here to destroy your family or whatever. So yeah, I mean, one can kind of get that. But this seems like a much more interesting, nuanced role at the very least. So one hopes that he enjoyed this role a little bit more than just clown work. But yeah, I mean, I like just the fact that it looks different. You know, it has a WandaVision vibe in general, not at all concept or content at all, but more so just the way that it looks different and it feels different tangibly. Like one could have said from the She-Hulk trailers that, oh, this looks different, but you can also tell, well, this is still very much MCU. This just looks like a different show. Just like the trailers for WandaVision, for the most part, look like just a different show altogether. So I am not, and when I say different, I mean not related to the MCU. So I watched this trailer, and I was really interested. But then, right, I leaned back and I said, this is fascinating because I don't know how other people who watch this trailer are going to take it. I don't know if anybody watches this trailer and just doesn't recognize the Marvel Studios logo at the end on top of Wonder Man and just doesn't catch that. I don't know if they're going to realize what this is. And because of that, I don't know if this marketing campaign is genius or if it's going to be a massive flop and nobody's going to see the show. Because, I mean, because marketing, right? Marketing is intended to be for people who are not interested in the show to begin with, to convince them to watch the show or movie. And for people like me, and for people like you, I'm assuming, who are listening to this podcast, I'm sure we're going to all watch Wonder Man, right? It's what we do. But for people who have no interest in Wonder Man, have no idea what Wonder Man even is, who's watching the show? I mean, who's watching this trailer and then convinced to watch it? So I'm so curious about what the demographic, the target that the marketing team is trying to get at here, because I frankly have no idea. I think it's going to be a fascinating thing to see who actually is interested in watching this Wonder Man show and who actually, you know, what the ratings numbers look like. It could be a cult classic. It could be a hit because people are just interested in it, or it could be a massive flop. And I'm not talking about quality. I'm just talking about the streaming numbers. So we'll have to see about all of that. But I personally am very interested based on what I saw in this trailer. So guys, what did you think about the first trailer for Wonder Man, the Yahya Abdul-Mateen Disney Plus Marvel Cinematic Universe show coming out in 2026? Let me know in the comments down below. And everybody, we are, again, entering a new era of the ACCESS Blockbusters pod. Thank you so much for listening to episode number 100. If you are so inclined, if you want to ask a question for our upcoming AMA, I'm hoping maybe to have, I would hope to have the segment out where I answer all the questions by episode 102, but hopefully by then. So we'll see. If you are so inclined, please make sure to drop a question in the comments of either Spotify or YouTube or wherever. You can email me as well on accessblockbusters@gmail.com. Anything that you are interested in hearing my thoughts about. We will be doing the AMA. I'm sure that we're going to get more questions once the individual segment comes out in a few weeks, or in a couple weeks. And so hopefully we'll get some more there. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for episode 100. It has been so fun, so amazing. We are barreling towards Thanksgiving, which is when a lot of really exciting movies are coming out. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, road to 2,000 subscribers, we are headed towards that direction. Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Overcast as well for audio only. And that will do it, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.